Algebra 1, good to see you guys again. If I'm being honest, it's still a little different here. I miss seeing your faces. Just hoping these videos are making sense to you guys and that the Ed Puzzle stuff is making sense to you. I had a student tell me that when I put my voice over it, that kind of helped a little bit. So that's something that I'm going to try to do maybe a little bit more for you. And just again, give you more opportunities to be exposed to the material, the different concepts. If you guys have questions, you can always still email me. That's always an option. And whenever we do a Zoom meeting, I'd love for you guys to be there for that. That way you can ask questions. We see each other live. I can do problems back here up on the board. And just find ways to really bridge that gap from classroom to wherever you guys are watching these videos. So again, miss you guys. Hope you guys are doing good. But for our new section today, Section 7, this is the quadratic formula. And yeah, you made it. It's official. The quadratic formula is kind of like one of the biggest, most well-known equations in algebra. It's very important. It's one of those things that you're going to use in geometry. You're going to use plenty of times in Algebra 2. And it's just really important to know, understand, grasp how to use it because it basically works every time. It's going to be one of those equations where it's going to guarantee either showing you what that answer is or proving out that there is no solution, if that may be the case for a specific problem. So this is it, guys, right here. The magical quadratic formula. It is negative b plus or minus. You guys remember that square roots, we always have to show the positive or the negative value because in a square root, you're not sure. Could be the negatives, could be the positives, so you have to show both. So again, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 multiplied by a multiplied by c, and that whole thing is divided by 2 times a. And then off to the side, I just wanted to make sure you saw, again, this is what our trinomial is looking like. So whatever you have here in front of x, that's a. Whatever in front of x squared, that is a. Whatever is in front of x, that's b, and then the number that's totally by itself, the constant value, that's c. So I also want to make sure that you guys copy the concept summary on page 651. That's going to be important. I got it right down here. It's just going to show you a list of everything that you've learned up to this point, and it's multiple methods on how to solve quadratics. Okay, so you have factoring, you have using the square root, we have completing the square, graphing, even though graphing is really not the most reliable method, and of course the quadratic formula right here. So just to tell you usually what students do, I've taught this enough times, students tend to either do factoring or quadratic formula. Those tend to be like the two most popular methods. If you're someone who really likes just plugging in values and calculations and you're good with the calculations, you're confident with using order of operations, then this is it. This is going to be your section. It's just plug it in, work it out every single time. If you really like factoring, if you're good at that, if you can see it and place it out in your head, then factoring is going to work. However, there are problems that you can't factor. And that's where the quadratic really comes in because it works every single time. Okay? So I just wanted to put this note here. This method, again, it works every time. It'll either give you the answer, even if that answer has a square root in it, it's going to show that, or it's going to determine for you that that does not have an answer. In other words, the solution is no solution. Okay? So we're going to do 3 example problems here. And then these example problems should show you if you're going to have a square root, if you're going to have a nice, round, easy number, or maybe if you're just going to have no solution. Okay? So let's work these out. All right. So what you should see with this first problem here, x squared plus 4x minus 1, I want to make sure you guys clearly see our values for a, for b, and for c. Okay? So a, we're looking right in front of x squared. That's just 1. All right? They don't write anything in there, so you know there's a coefficient of 1. For b, it looks like it's a positive 4. And for c, it looks like it's a negative 1. Okay? So then we take these values, a, b, and c, and we're going to plug them into the quadratic formula over here. Something that I didn't mention yet, that negative sign in front of b, pay close attention to that negative sign because that's what's given in the equation, which means if you had a negative sign here, like you're going to notice we have one here for the second example, and then you incorporate that with the negative sign that's in the formula, what's it going to do to that number? It's going to change it into a positive. Okay? But we don't have that for the first example. We have a positive 4 that's now going to be put into the equation with that negative sign in front of it. So I'm going to erase these values over here just so that I can get a little bit more space. So we have a negative 4 plus or minus, and then in that radical, b is 4, we're going to square it, minus, and then I'm going to start putting these numbers in parentheses just so that you can make sure everything's multiplied together. That number 4 is given. That number 4 right here is the same as this number 4 right here. Okay? And then a, remember, was 1, and c, right over here, is negative 1. Okay? And then this whole thing is divided by 2 times a, which is 2, and remember a is just 1. Okay? So let's work this out. Got a negative 4, stays on the outside, plus or minus, and then underneath this radical, you got 4 squared, which is 16. That negative sign goes with that 4, so it's negative 4 times 1, which is negative 4, and then that negative 4 is multiplied by that negative 1, and that's going to turn it into a positive 4. And then this again is all divided by 2. Okay? Now 16 plus 4, you're going to see that that's going to be a square root of 20. You have that negative 4 plus or minus all over 2. Alright, now I hope you guys are copying this down. Maybe pause the video a little bit if you need to copy that down more. So to save on space, I'm going to have to erase right here, and then I'm going to bring my work back up to here so I can fill it in. Okay, so just letting you guys know ahead of time. So we are going to erase, and I'm going to make sure that I copy that down right. That's a negative 4 plus or minus square root 20, all divided by 2. Alright, now the reason why I wanted to clear out some space, I wanted you guys to see that that square root of 20, it's not a perfect square, but we can reduce it. Remember how we reduced radicals? So off to the side here, square root of 20 is the same thing as saying square root of 4 and then square root of 5. We're breaking it down like a factor tree, okay? Now, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 5, that's a prime number, so we're going to leave that. So this is what I'm really looking at now. A negative 4, that came from here, work down, plus or minus. Now I have a 2 square root 5, all divided by 2. Okay. Now, what you guys need to see, something extra here, is that these 3 numbers, all 3 of these numbers, are all divisible by the number 2. If all 3 values, here, here, and here, are all divisible by the same number, you can reduce all 3. If all 3 values are not divisible by the same number, you cannot reduce all 3 values. Okay? So all 3 of these are divisible by 2. So that becomes a 1, that becomes a 1, and that becomes a 2. All I did is divide 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, so now all of this is a negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. And that right there is your answer. Now, when it comes to working these types of equations out, for you guys, that's about as hard as they get. So letting you know, the first example problem was probably the hardest example problem. These guys are a little bit nicer, but I want to make sure that you give this section the time it deserves. So you're going to have to maybe re-watch this video, re-watch this whole part right here with the first example. Do it again, take a look in the section. It's important. I'm going to put more Ed puzzle stuff up there so that you guys are able to just, again, be exposed to more quadratic formulas. All right, let's take a look at example 2 here. So it's already set up. We have a negative 8, but that negative sign right there with the negative b is going to turn it into a positive 8. Remember, that negative and that negative put together will create a positive. Now we're going to go plus or minus. Let's put the square root, and again we have b squared minus, and then I'm going to put all 3 in parentheses, 4. What's a? A is 1. And what's c? C is 16. Okay? So now, don't forget, all divided by 2 times a, which is just going to be 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. All right, let's figure out some stuff here. I'm going to make sure I do my calculations right. All right. Okay, this one is going to work out nicely. There we go. So we have 8 plus or minus, and then inside the square root, 8 times 8, 64. A negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. A negative 4 times 16 minus 64. That works out pretty great. 64 and 64. Again, that's all divided by 2. But really, this is just going to be 0. So you're going to say 8 plus or minus 0, all divided by 2. Now, I don't want that to confuse you here. 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 minus 0 is still 8. So this right here is really just the same thing as saying 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So all of this works out to simply just be 4. Now, if you guys are able to see, the original problem is even factorable. So I don't want you to feel like defeated, like, oh, you just did all that work. But if you can factor it, go ahead and factor it. Even in this assignment, section 7, any other section, if you can factor something and that works for you and you get to your answer faster, do it. There's nothing wrong with that. But some problems you can't factor, so you got to use the quadratic formula. All right, let's take a look at this one right here. We got a negative 21 on the outside. We need to bring that in so everything is all together. So x squared minus 5x now plus 21. Okay, and again, negative and negative are going to make that 5 become positive. So we have right here 5 plus or minus, and then a square root, and we're going to say that's b squared, that's 5, minus, and we have 3 numbers coming up. Remember, that 4 right there is that 4 right there. What's a? A is 1. What is c? C is 21. And that's all divided by 2 times a. And remember, in this problem, a is 1. So that's the same thing as just saying 2. Okay, so let's work out our math over here. Let's see, we have 5 plus or minus, and inside our radical, 5 squared is 25. Now, negative 4 times 1, negative 4. Negative 4 times 21, let's see, that is 59. So, 4, nope, that is not negative 59, but when we work it out, we're going to get a negative 59 in here. So, we have 84, my apologies there, 84, but but I already worked out the math. So what you're going to see is that 25 minus 84, all of this over here, you're going to get a 5 plus or minus. This is negative 59 over 2. Now what you need to see, negative 59. Can you ever take the square root of a negative number? No. So this type of a quadratic here, if you ever get a negative underneath that radical, in other words, you're taking the square root of a negative, your answer is no solution, because you cannot take the square root of a negative value. So I want to make sure that you see that. Look at the whole process that we took here all the way over to that, giving you a final solution here of actually no solution. Okay? All right, guys. That about wraps up section 7, quadratic formula. Again, you made it. We are almost done with the chapter. I believe we only have one more section. That section still works with the quadratic formula, but it's real easy. All right? This section, I'm telling you in advance, section 7, it's tougher than section 8, so you're going to end with a slightly easier section. And then we're just going to proceed and start reviewing, and doing the best we can, which eventually will lead us up to a test. All right, hope you guys are doing good. Again, love you, miss you, and see you in the next video.